My sister asked me to be her maid of honor. I spent $5,000 on the perfect dress. But when I saw the groom at the altar, it was my ex-fiancé who had abandoned me without explanation. My revenge was absolutely spectacular. But before I tell you exactly what happened, subscribe to our channel. The cream-colored envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, sliding through my Denver apartment's mail slot like a harbinger of change I wasn't prepared for. At 30, I'd grown accustomed to wedding invitations. My college friends had been marrying off steadily for the past few years, leaving me to navigate an endless stream of bridal showers and bachelorette parties as the perpetual single friend. But this envelope was different. The elegant script addressed me as Maid of Honor, and my heart lurched with a mixture of joy and surprise. Lily, my younger sister by 2 years, was finally getting married. After years of disappointing relationships and broken hearts, she'd found someone who wanted to spend forever with her. The fact that she'd chosen me to stand beside her on the most important day of her life felt like a bridge rebuilt between us, spanning the distance that had grown since our parents' bitter divorce 8 years ago. I tore open the envelope with trembling fingers, my eyes scanning the beautiful calligraphy. Lily Catherine Morrison and Derek James Hamilton request your presence. The date was set for October 15th, just 7 months away, at the Fairmont, San Francisco, the same hotel where our grandmother had hosted Christmas dinners during our childhood. It was a sentimental choice that made my chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Lily had always been the romantic one, collecting pressed flowers and writing poetry about true love while I focused on building my marketing career. She deserved this happiness, especially after watching me fumble through my own disastrous engagement last year. The memory of Marcus and how spectacularly our relationship had imploded still stung. But seeing Lily's joy helped ease some of that lingering pain. I called her immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. "Emma!" she squealed before I could even speak, her voice bright with the kind of excitement I hadn't heard from her in years. "Did you get it? Are you crying?" "I'm crying." We talked for 3 hours that first evening, planning dress colors and discussing guest lists. She wanted everything in shades of champagne and blush, she said, with garden roses and eucalyptus. It sounded like something out of a magazine spread, the kind of wedding I'd once dreamed of having myself. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be standing beside her in that dream while still nursing wounds from my own failed engagement. But Lily's happiness was infectious, and I found myself genuinely excited to help her create the perfect day. "Tell me everything about Derek," I said, as we discussed timeline details. "I feel like I know nothing about this mystery man who's stolen my sister's heart." There was a brief pause on the other end, and when Lily spoke again, her voice carried a different quality, softer, almost dreamy. "Oh, Emma, he's everything I never knew I needed. He's successful, charming, incredibly handsome, and he makes me feel like I'm the only woman in the world." She painted him in broad strokes, a finance executive from Chicago who'd moved to San Francisco for work, someone who appreciated fine wine and weekend getaways to Napa. But when I pressed for specifics about how they'd met, or when I might get to meet him before the wedding, she became strangely evasive. "He's actually traveling a lot for work right now," she explained with a nervous laugh. "Big merger happening. You know how it is. But don't worry, you'll absolutely love him when you meet him. I just know you two will get along perfectly." Something in her tone struck me as odd. Lily had never been secretive about her boyfriends before. Usually, she overshared every detail of her romantic life, texting me photos of their dinners and play-by-play accounts of their conversations. This newfound privacy felt out of character, but I attributed it to the seriousness of the relationship. Maybe she was being protective of what they had, wanting to keep it precious and private before sharing it with the world. The following weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of maid of honor responsibilities. I flew to San Francisco twice for dress fittings, ultimately spending close to $5,000 on a stunning champagne-colored gown that Lily insisted was absolutely perfect for the occasion. The dress was more expensive than anything I'd ever owned, but seeing Lily's face light up when I stepped out of the fitting room made every penny worthwhile. She actually cried tears of joy, clutching my hands and telling me I looked like something out of a fairy tale. In that moment, surrounded by mirrors and flowing silk, I felt closer to my sister than I had since we were children, back before competition and comparison had driven wedges between us. I threw myself into wedding planning with military precision, determined to give Lily the perfect celebration she deserved. I organized a bachelorette weekend in Napa Valley, coordinated with the other bridesmaids on shower gifts, and handled countless details from menu tastings to flower arrangements. Every element had to be flawless: the handwritten place cards, the signature cocktails named after their favorite vacation spots, even the specific shade of nail polish we'd all wear. Lily had suffered through enough heartbreak in her 20s. She deserved to have every dream fulfilled on her wedding day. If Derek could make her this happy, if he could see how special and deserving of love she was, then I would move heaven and earth to ensure their day was nothing short of magical. The bachelorette weekend in Napa should have been perfect. Sunshine streaming through vineyard rows, laughter echoing across rolling hills, and 6 women celebrating love and sisterhood. But from the moment we checked into the boutique hotel Lily had chosen, something felt fundamentally wrong. She was constantly distracted, checking her phone obsessively and stepping away to take hushed calls from Derek. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd flash me a tight smile and insist it was just pre-wedding jitters. But I'd seen wedding nerves before, and this felt different, more calculated than anxious, more secretive than stressed. Her closest friends seemed to sense it too, exchanging worried glances when they thought she wasn't looking, their cheerful chatter occasionally falling into uncomfortable silences. During our wine tasting at a hilltop vineyard overlooking the valley, I managed to corner Lily while the others were distracted by the sommelier's presentation on terroir and tannins. The golden afternoon light caught the highlights in her hair, making her look ethereal and beautiful. But there was something brittle in her smile that made my stomach clench with unease. "Lily, you know you can tell me anything, right?" I kept my voice gentle, non-threatening. "If you're having second thoughts, or if something's bothering you about Derek, I'm here. No judgment, no lectures, just sister to sister." For a moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked, and I saw something that looked almost like guilt flash across her features. "I'm not having second thoughts," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm scared you won't approve of him, of us." The admission caught me completely off guard. Lily had never sought my approval for anything in her romantic life. If anything, she'd always been the rebellious one, bringing home guys specifically designed to shock our conservative parents. Her sudden concern for my opinion felt not just out of character, but almost manipulative in its timing. Why would she care about my approval now, just months before the wedding, when she'd never cared before? The question lodged itself in my mind like a splinter, small but persistently uncomfortable. "Why wouldn't I approve?" I pressed. But she'd already turned away, rejoining the group with a brightness that felt performance more than genuine joy. The rest of the weekend followed the same pattern, moments of forced celebration punctuated by Lily's mysterious phone calls and mood swings that seemed to follow no logical pattern. She'd disappear for 20-minute conversations, returning with red-rimmed eyes that she'd blame on seasonal allergies, despite the fact that we were indoors most of the time. When her friend Hannah jokingly asked to see recent photos of the groom, Lily claimed her phone storage was full and quickly steered the conversation toward wedding favors and seating arrangements. The drive back to San Francisco was uncomfortably quiet, with Lily staring out the passenger window while I navigated the winding highway that cut through golden hills dotted with oak trees. I'd offered to drop her at her apartment before heading to the airport, expecting our usual ritual of extending every moment together with coffee or a quick meal. Instead, she seemed eager for me to leave, checking the time repeatedly and mentioning vague commitments that couldn't wait until Monday. When I finally pulled up to her building, a charming Victorian conversion in the Mission District, she gave me a quick, almost perfunctory hug. "See you in a few weeks," she called over her shoulder, practically sprinting toward the entrance without looking back. The 3-hour flight to Denver gave me time to replay every strange moment from the weekend, searching for clues I might have missed or explanations that would make sense of Lily's behavior. I found myself thinking about Hannah's comment about Derek having one of those faces, familiar in a way that had made her frown with recognition she couldn't quite place. When I'd asked what she meant, Hannah had shrugged it off. But there had been something in her expression. A flicker of uncertainty that suggested she'd seen Derek somewhere before, but couldn't remember where. The pieces of a puzzle I didn't understand were floating just out of reach, waiting for someone to arrange them into a picture that would explain everything. Back in Denver, I dove into work with renewed intensity, hoping that the demands of launching a new campaign for a tech startup would quiet the worried voice in the back of my mind. But late at night, when I was alone in my apartment with only the distant hum of traffic for company, the doubts crept back in like shadows lengthening across a room. I found myself scrolling through Lily's social media obsessively, looking for any glimpse of the mysterious Derek who would soon become my brother-in-law. But her recent posts were carefully curated, artistic shots of her engagement ring, photos of wedding planning details, inspirational quotes about love, with no sign of her fiancé anywhere. It was as if she was preparing to marry a ghost, someone who existed only in her stories and never in her documented life. October 15th dawned crisp and clear in San Francisco, the kind of perfect autumn day that made the city shimmer like something out of a postcard. I'd arrived 3 days early to help with final preparations, and the morning routine felt surreal. Hair and makeup appointments, champagne that tasted like celebration and possibility, 5 bridesmaids chattering excitedly about love and happily ever afters. My $5,000 dress hung in the hotel closet like a symbol of my investment in Lily's happiness, every thread representing my faith in her judgment and my commitment to being the supportive sister she needed. But beneath the surface excitement, that persistent unease from the bachelorette weekend continued to gnaw at me, a low-grade anxiety I couldn't shake no matter how many deep breaths I took. Lily looked absolutely radiant in her wedding gown, a masterpiece of Italian silk and French lace that had taken 8 months to create and cost more than my car. She was luminous with joy, practically glowing as the makeup artist put the finishing touches on her look, and the photographer captured every moment for posterity. But when she looked at me in the ornate hotel mirror, her reflection caught something in my expression that made her pause. "Emma," she said softly, her voice carrying an undertone I couldn't quite identify. "I need you to know that everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been about finding real love. The kind that changes everything, you know?" Before I could ask what she meant, the wedding coordinator was bustling us toward the door with military efficiency. The grand ballroom had been transformed into something from a fantasy. Thousands of white roses cascading from crystal chandeliers, silk draping that caught and reflected the afternoon light streaming through tall windows overlooking the city. 300 guests filled the space with the soft murmur of anticipation, their faces bright with wedding day joy and expectation. I took my place at the altar, my hands trembling slightly as I held my bouquet of garden roses and eucalyptus, trying to calm my racing heart. The groomsmen filed in, their faces unfamiliar to me. Another reminder of how little I actually knew about Derek's life, his background, or the man who was about to become part of our family. The processional music began, Pachelbel's Canon in DZ, the same piece Lily had played at our grandmother's funeral 5 years ago, and I watched 300 faces turn toward the back of the ballroom with expressions of joyful anticipation. The bridesmaids glided down the aisle in their champagne-colored gowns, each one beautiful and beaming with happiness for my sister. My heart was pounding so hard I was certain everyone could hear it echoing through the cavernous space, though I couldn't explain the overwhelming sense of dread that was building in my chest. This was supposed to be a celebration, the happiest day of Lily's life, the culmination of months of planning and dreaming. Instead, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, waiting for something terrible to happen. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened with ceremonial gravitas, and Lily appeared on our father's arm, absolutely glowing in her wedding finery. She was stunning, more beautiful than I'd ever seen her, radiant with the kind of happiness that made everyone in the room smile just looking at her. For a moment, I forgot my anxiety in the pure joy of seeing my sister so completely, utterly happy. But then movement caught my peripheral vision, and I turned to see the groom rotating to face his approaching bride. Time slowed to a crawl as recognition hit me like a physical blow that knocked the air from my lungs. The dark hair I'd run my fingers through during countless Sunday mornings. The strong jawline I'd traced with my lips during lazy evenings. The brown eyes that had looked into mine and promised forever before breaking my heart into pieces. Derek James Hamilton wasn't a stranger. He was Marcus Chen, my Marcus, the man who'd gotten down on one knee in Millennium Park 14 months ago and sworn he'd love me until his dying breath. The man who'd vanished from my life 3 weeks before our wedding with nothing but a cruel text message saying I was too needy and clingy for someone of his caliber. The man who'd blocked my number, deleted all traces of our relationship from social media, and disappeared so completely that I'd wondered if our entire 2-year relationship had been an elaborate illusion. And now he was standing at the altar in a custom tuxedo, waiting to marry my sister, his face a mask of composure that I recognized from the corporate presentations that had built his fortune. Our eyes met across the flower-strewn space between us, and in that devastating instant, I saw the truth written in his expression like a confession. This wasn't coincidence or cruel fate. It was calculated, deliberate, perhaps even vindictive. He'd known exactly who Lily was when he'd approached her, known exactly what this would do to me. As my sister reached the altar and our father placed her trembling hand in Marcus's steady one, she turned to me with a smile that wasn't joy. It was triumph, pure and simple. "Surprise, sis," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear over the organ music and rustling silk. Her words hit me like ice water, the final piece of a puzzle I'd never wanted to solve. But as I stood there in my designer dress, surrounded by flowers and candlelight and the expectant faces of 300 guests, I realized something that made my blood turn to liquid nitrogen. My surprise was going to be much, much worse than theirs. The ceremony proceeded like a beautiful nightmare, each traditional vow feeling like a dagger twist in my chest as I stood frozen in my designated position, gripping my bouquet so tightly that thorns from the roses drew blood from my palms. Every promise of love and fidelity spoken by Marcus, Derek, felt like a mockery of the words he'd once whispered to me in the darkness of our shared bedroom. When the officiant asked if anyone had a reason these two should not be wed, the silence stretched like a taut wire threatening to snap, and I felt 300 pairs of eyes boring into me, waiting for my response. Marcus stared at me with a mixture of challenge and fear, clearly wondering if I'd have the courage to destroy Lily's perfect day. The moment passed like a held breath finally released, and I remained silent, but my mind was already racing toward a plan that would make their victory feel like the hollow, pyrrhic thing it truly was. During the cocktail hour that followed their kiss and pronouncement as husband and wife, I excused myself to the ladies' room and locked myself in the furthest stall, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. I Googled Marcus's real name, Marcus Chen, not Derek Hamilton, and found exactly what I'd hoped I wouldn't find. The SEC investigation that had been quietly building for 18 months. The federal grand jury that had been impaneled 6 weeks ago. The list of victims whose retirement savings had vanished into his cryptocurrency investment scheme that promised guaranteed returns but delivered only devastation. According to the most recent article I could find, federal marshals were expected to move within the next 2 weeks. Lily had unknowingly married a man who would be in federal prison before their first anniversary, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed, their future reduced to ash and legal fees. The reception was an exercise in maintaining composure while watching my sister and my ex-fiancé play the perfect couple for their unsuspecting audience. Marcus was in his element, charming, confident, working the room with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to separating people from their money. I watched him dance with our grandmother, his hand gentle on her lower back as he helped her navigate the polished floor, and felt nauseated by how easily he fooled everyone who mattered to us. Even our father, typically suspicious of Lily's boyfriends and protective to a fault, seemed completely enchanted by his new son-in-law's talk of market trends and investment opportunities. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. Marcus was probably already planning how to exploit these new family connections for his next scheme. During dinner, as the wedding party was introduced to thunderous applause and photographers captured every moment for posterity, I found myself studying Lily's face for signs of genuine happiness beneath the performance. She was radiant, certainly, but there was something else in her expression, a quality of satisfaction that went beyond bridal joy into something that looked almost like revenge completed. When she caught me watching her, she raised her champagne glass in a subtle toast, her smile containing secrets that made my stomach churn with a mixture of betrayal and rage. She knew exactly what she'd done, had planned every moment of this devastating surprise, and was savoring my pain like fine wine. My moment came during the traditional maid of honor speech, when I stood before 300 guests with my champagne flute raised and my heart beating like a war drum. "Lily and Derek," I began, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside my chest, "represent something rare and beautiful in this world. Two people who found each other against all odds." I paused, letting my eyes find Marcus's face in the crowd, watching his expression shift from confidence to wariness as he tried to read my intentions. "Derek, I want you to know that Lily is the most precious thing in our family. She's loyal, trusting, and she loves completely, sometimes too completely for her own good. Anyone who hurts her will answer to all of us who love her." The threat was subtle but unmistakable, and I saw him understand that I knew exactly who and what he was. As the evening progressed and guests danced to the 12-piece orchestra Lily had insisted upon, I made my decision with the cold clarity of someone who had nothing left to lose. When federal agents came for Marcus, and they would come, probably within days, Lily would be collateral damage in a scheme she'd never understood. Her bank accounts would be frozen, her reputation destroyed, her future reduced to legal proceedings and media scrutiny. She'd orchestrated this elaborate revenge against me, but she'd also unknowingly orchestrated her own destruction. The justice in it was so perfect it almost took my breath away. I wouldn't have to lift a finger. I'd simply have to wait and watch as her perfect plan consumed her like a beautiful, terrible fire. During the last dance, as Marcus spun Lily around the floor in her billowing gown, while guests threw rose petals and took photos that would soon become evidence in a federal case, I felt something settle into place in my chest, like pieces of a lock clicking together. They thought they'd won, thought they'd delivered the perfect blow to the sister who'd always overshadowed them. But sometimes the most devastating revenge was simply allowing people to destroy themselves while you watched from a safe distance. In less than 2 weeks, when the federal marshals came for my sister's husband, I'd be there to pick up the pieces of her shattered life, just as any loving sister should be. 11 days after the wedding, my phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Denver time while I was drinking coffee and reading the morning news. It was Lily, sobbing so hysterically that I could barely understand her words through the static and tears. "Emma," she gasped between broken breaths. "They came for Derek, federal agents, at our apartment, with guns and handcuffs and search warrants. They're saying he stole money from people, that our whole marriage is built on lies I never knew existed. I don't understand what's happening to my life." I closed my eyes and took a slow, deliberate breath, preparing to play the role of shocked and devastated sister with all the skill I'd developed during years of corporate presentations. "I'm booking the next flight out," I told her, already reaching for my laptop. "Don't talk to anyone. Not reporters, not lawyers, not even the neighbors. I'll be there in 4 hours." The scene at Lily's apartment was devastating in its completeness. Boxes of evidence hauled away by federal agents, wedding photos scattered across hardwood floors like discarded dreams, bank statements and legal documents spread across every surface like the debris of a financial hurricane. My sister sat curled on the white leather couch that had been a wedding gift from our parents, still wearing yesterday's clothes and looking like someone had physically broken her into pieces. She threw herself into my arms the moment I walked through the door, and I held her while she sobbed against my shoulder with the kind of raw, animal grief that comes from having your entire reality shattered in a single morning. "How could I have been so stupid?" she cried, her voice muffled against my sweater. How could I not have seen what he really was? Over the following days, as news outlets picked up the story and Marcus's elaborate scheme unraveled in devastating detail, the full scope of his crimes became horrifyingly clear. Federal prosecutors painted a picture of a sociopathic financial predator who'd systematically targeted elderly investors, promising guaranteed returns on cryptocurrency investments that existed only in fabricated spreadsheets and forged documents. Lily watched every news report with growing horror, finally understanding that she'd married not just a criminal, but a monster who'd stolen the life savings of dozens of retirees, grandparents and widows who'd trusted him with their futures. "He used me," she whispered one evening as we sat surrounded by legal documents and frozen asset notices. "He married me to look legitimate, to gain access to Dad's network and our family's reputation. I was just another mark in his long con." The divorce papers were filed within 3 weeks, Lily's marriage officially annulled before she'd even had time to change her last name on her driver's license or update her passport. Marcus was denied bail after prosecutors argued he was both a flight risk and a danger to the community, and he was remanded to federal custody to await trial. The $1 million condo they'd shared was seized as part of asset forfeiture proceedings, along with the cars, jewelry, and art collection that had comprised their briefly luxurious lifestyle. Lily lost everything: her home, her savings, her sense of reality, even some of her friends who couldn't reconcile the woman they knew with the wife of a convicted felon. But she still had me, her devoted sister, ready to help her rebuild from the smoking ruins of her life. "I need to ask you something," she said one evening 3 weeks after the arrest, as we packed up the few personal belongings she'd been allowed to retrieve from the seized condo. She was holding her wedding album, its pages filled with photos of a day that now felt like evidence of an elaborate lie rather than a celebration of love. "That day at the altar, when you saw Derek's face, did you know? Did you recognize him from somewhere?" I looked up from the box of books I was packing, meeting her eyes with the steady calm I'd cultivated through weeks of playing the supportive sister. The moment of truth had finally arrived, the question I'd been expecting and dreading in equal measure. "Yes," I said simply, my voice carrying no emotion beyond quiet sadness. I recognized him immediately. He was my fiancé for 2 years, Lily. The man who destroyed my heart so completely that I swore off serious relationships. His real name is Marcus Chen, and he left me 3 weeks before our wedding with a text message that called me pathetic and clingy. I watched her face cycle through disbelief, recognition, and finally devastating comprehension as the full scope of what she'd done settled over her like a suffocating blanket. She'd thought she was stealing something precious from me, but she'd actually saved me from a nightmare that would have destroyed my life, just as it was now destroying hers. "Why didn't you stop the wedding?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the sound of traffic drifting up from the street below. "If you knew what he was, why didn't you save me?" I set down the book I'd been holding and looked at my sister. Really looked at her, taking in the hollow cheeks and dark circles that had replaced her wedding day glow. "Because sometimes," I said softly, "the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them learn their own lessons, even when those lessons are painful. You wanted to hurt me, Lily. You succeeded. But you also saved me from a future that would have been so much worse than anything you could have imagined." She stared at me for a long moment, understanding finally dawning in her eyes like a terrible sunrise. before she buried her face in her hands and wept for everything she'd lost, including the sister she'd betrayed and the innocence she'd never get back. So, what did you think of this revenge story? It was intense, right? Leave a comment below telling me which part shocked you the most. I love reading everything you write. I swear I read every comment. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring you even more intense stories. And look, there's another incredible video waiting for you right here on the screen. Click here now, and I'll see you there for another jaw-dropping story.